Hello, my name is Ben,
And my name's Josh.
and welcome back to FPL Graduates, and welcome back to another video. As we know, it is Game Week 29, a big blank game week, and we're going to be going into our transfer targets of players that we think you should be targeting to bring into your fantasy Premier League teams.
Okay, so yeah, this video is for free hitters or non-free hitters. All these players you should probably be considering if you're looking to make some transfers in this game week. So we'll start off in defence. Pedro Porro and Udogie are the first two that come up. If you're free hitting, I'm sure money is no object given the fact that there's no real premium options available. So for me, I think Pedro Porro is the better pick. But say if you're on a bit of a budget and you're not free hitting, I don't think there's too much between these two guys, Ben, right?
Yeah, not too much between them. If you're looking to save budget on a non-free hit, then maybe Udogie is the guy to go for. But I'd only go with one out of the two of these guys, especially with how much talent Spurs have going forwards in the obvious ones in Son and Maddison. So I'd be looking, yeah, potentially Pedro Porro more so over Udogie. I've got Udogie in my team, but I'll be free hitting probably into Pedro Porro. The set pieces are a factor as well into this. Obviously, Porro on a lot of set pieces, corners, etc. So it's got that higher assist potential, in my opinion. And obviously, there's that attacking threat as well that comes with a player playing so attacking for Ange Postecoglou's side.
Yeah, 100%. And then we're moving on into the Brentford defence. Brentford have the highest chance of clean sheet this week at 32%. So if you're looking at a defence defensively, according to the bookies and stats and all of that sort of jazz, it should be Brentford. But Burnley have been decent in recent weeks, scoring goals. Were unlucky not to score against Bournemouth. They accumulated like 1.6 xg in that game and didn't manage to score. Roslev is probably the safe pick given the fact that Reguilon had that injury scare last week. Thomas Frank has come out and said that he is available for Game Week 29, so we'll have to sort of wait and see. You'll probably know more of that by the deadline. Obviously, the deadline's a little bit later this week at 1:30 on Saturday UK time. What's your thoughts on Brentford's defence, Ben? Would this be a defence that you potentially double up on a free hit?
Double up on, not too sure. Definitely at least one guy, and Roslev is probably a decent option to go for. Yes, Brentford defensively haven't been too great at all. I mean, the last clean sheet they have was against Wolves in game week 24, so it's been a little while since their last clean sheet. But in that time, Roslev has got a goal, so there is a bit of attacking potential in there as well, albeit ever so slight. Yeah, I think it's a case of it's the lesser of many evils in the defence this week, and Roslev could be a decent option for those in particular that are free hitting.
Yeah, and then finally is Alfie Doughty. He's been on the transfer targets for a couple of weeks now. Obviously, a lot of people who aren't free hitting, like myself, will probably have him in their teams from his double in Game Week 28. It's one of the massive appeals of those Luton assets is that they obviously doubled as well as play in the blank. Obviously, attacking threat is decent. Main issue with Luton is that they've got so many injuries defensively that they are really struggling, potentially shifting formation back to a four-back now. What's your thoughts on him, Ben? Is he sort of like a must include, or do you think you could get away without having him?
I think you could probably get away with not including him, just because of defensive woes. But then you have got the attacking potential, and Luton at home and no pushovers. They'll test any team, and this Forest team haven't been great either. Not one in a little while now. So yeah, I'd definitely consider Doughty. Don't think he's essential, but I think for the attacking threat, he's definitely sort of more likely to be included in a lot of managers' teams than not. Okay, so moving on into the midfielders that we'll be targeting. And of course, as you can see, there are a couple of omissions here. Heung-min Son, we assume everyone has anyway. And the same with Watkins as well. So we've got James Maddison in there, and he's just starting to look really good now in that Spurs team. Really looked impressive against Aston Villa. And in my opinion and Josh's opinion, we think he is potentially must have for your FPL teams this week, regardless of whether you are on a free hit or not. Josh, you're thinking the same as me, right?
Yeah, he's going to be one of the guys that I bring in this week on my non-free hit. I think he's pretty close to essential, like you mentioned. Ange Postecoglou mentioned as well after that Villa game at the weekend that they want to see him playing further forward and increasing his goal threat, similar to like we saw before he got that injury earlier in the season. So good news for Maddison owners. I think he should be at a decent ownership as well because he won't be captained, I wouldn't have thought, by too many people. So yeah, it should be, I'd guess, around 60-70% EO at the higher rank. So yeah, nice little asset to own, and you know what you're getting with James Maddison. He's been in FPL for years now. He's consistent, and if Son's going to score a couple of goals, then you'd expect Maddison to get a couple of returns too.
Okay, so next up, we're going to be talking about another Spurs asset. It's Brennan Johnson of Spurs. And now it's an interesting one that we've gone for him because obviously there's going to be at least Maddison and Son. The triple up could be on for Spurs. They're looking decent attacking. The fixture maybe isn't the greatest from a defensive point of view anyway, so it may be worth tripling up on that Spurs attack. Josh, initial thoughts on Brennan Johnson and the thought of potentially going for free attacking assets in that Spurs team?
Yeah, I actually quite like it, to be fair. And I think if I was on a free hit draft, I'd definitely consider it. I think a lot of managers will go Porro, so if you're worried about effective ownership and stuff like that, then maybe steer clear of Johnson. But a triple Spurs attack is going to be really interesting. Obviously, Fulham are really good at home as well, so the chance of them scoring is probably quite high. And I think, yeah, Brennan Johnson for me, between him and Kulusevski, I think one of them could be a really nice addition for your attacking players. If you're looking for maybe play a 5-man midfield and only the 2 up top, I think he's a good option too. So yeah, a really nice option. Obviously scored at the weekend. He's just involved a lot. You know, does tend to miss big chances here and there, but he's in and around, and I think that's one of the key things for him. And at such a cheap price, I don't think you can go wrong.
Okay, so next up is Morgan Gibbs-White of Nottingham Forest. Now, they've got a little bit, I'd say a difficult fixture against Luton away, but it is a fixture that I believe Forest can score in. And Gibbs-White is the main man at Nottingham Forest. If Forest are going to score, it's likely that a lot of the play goes through him. Josh, we like him as an asset. Is he close to essential? Possibly not, right?
Yeah, it doesn't really tick many boxes for me. I mentioned in our free hit draft video, if Alanga didn't get benched at the weekend, I think he'd be the go-to asset out of this Forest attack. Gibbs-White's expected data is really low. Not great at all, to be honest. The only sort of potential upside with him is that he could be on penalties. He scored the last penalty for Nottingham Forest that they had. The only caveat to that is that Chris Wood could take them off him if he does start. So, yeah, for me, he's probably an avoid. I think there are better options. For example, I'd take Brennan Johnson over Gibbs-White if I was free hitting this week. If you're not free hitting and you're looking for a midfield transfer, I don't think Gibbs-White is anywhere near the top of the list.
Okay, so a midfielder that I maybe do prefer a little bit more is Leon Bailey of Aston Villa. A little bit more nailed on to start in a Villa team that is fairly attacking. However, the downside is that Villa aren't looking too great at the moment. Josh, I'm sort of wavering on Bailey a little bit. Are you doing the same here?
Yeah, I think for me it's all down to how many minutes he gets in Europe in midweek. Obviously, Moussa Diaby is like a like-for-like replacement for him, so it doesn't help him minutes-wise, and we know that already from him, barely finishing 90 minutes throughout the season. So for me, he is a better option than Douglas Luiz, especially now John McGinn's got suspended. It will mean that Luiz will be playing a lot deeper, like he did against Spurs, and also Luiz mainly 75% of his returns this season have come at home, whereas Bailey's it's a little bit less. It's about 60-odd%. So yeah, for me, Villa, if they were at home, I'd like this fixture a lot more. Saying that, West Ham's defence has been poor as well, so it's a tough one for me. I'd maybe include him in a free hit. It'd definitely be in my consideration, but yeah, it's a tough pick, that fourth midfield spot.
Okay, and then finally from the midfielders, one that myself and Josh are definitely going to be having in our teams for Gameweek 29 is Jared Bowen, the main man up top for West Ham, who are looking fairly okay at the moment going forwards, especially with the inclusion back of Lucas Paqueta. Josh, that's the key thing for Jared Bowen, is Paqueta is back.
Yeah, 100%. He's averaging 0.42 expected goal involvement per 90 on the season. So 1 in 2 games, pretty much, you're going to get a return from him. Obviously, last game week, blanked against Burnley to a lot of managers' disappointment, but he was very unlucky not to return in that game. I think Paqueta managed to somehow block one of his headers off the line. So, there's so much variance going on in a fixture like that. Obviously, coming off an assist against Everton as well as a hat-trick against Brentford as well. He is picking up a bit of form. Obviously, the Burnley fixture sort of stalled him a little bit, but yeah, he's a no-brainer, I think, if you're free hitting this week. Okay, then, so moving on to the forwards, and obviously this is all dependent on what formation you're playing. If you're playing 3-5-2, you probably don't need to watch this segment of the video. You just need to pick Tony and Watkins and just leave it there. If you are going to play 3-4-3, though, there are a few options that you could potentially go for, and we'll discuss them right now. The first being Carlton Morris. He'll be quite high owned this week due to how many managers brought him in for the double, and then obviously you're playing Gameweek 29 as well. On penalties for Luton, he's got a decent goal record so far this season, especially in the last 8 or 9 game weeks. I think he's got 7 returns in those game weeks, so pretty decent standard considering his price. Are you tempted by him, Ben, or do you think there's better options?
I'm certainly tempted. I do think there's one or two options in there that might be a little bit better in terms of potential higher ceiling. I think Carlton Morris does limit himself to maybe one return a game, and that's that. Especially in the Luton team that doesn't score like bundles of goals, although they do score a little bit more at home than they do away. So yeah, I don't mind Carlton Morris at all for a lot of managers. For a free hit, I'd potentially say that there are a couple of options that I prefer anyway, but still a decent option nonetheless.
Yeah, and then moving on against Spurs this week, can you go for a little differential with Muniz coming in? He's only 4.5 million. I know price isn't really a factor on the free hit, but obviously he's had a decent record. Didn't return last game week, but before that was on a bit of form. The biggest caveat with Muniz in this fixture is that Raul Jimenez has come back into full team training. There is thoughts that potentially, if he doesn't start that game, he will at least take some minutes off of Muniz going into this Spurs fixture. So, what's your thoughts on this, Ben? Do you think it's sort of maybe a couple of weeks ago it would have worked, but for this game week maybe not?
Yeah, I think this game week's come a week or two late for guys who are looking to bring him potentially in. Yes, he's been in great form, but Raul Jimenez has always been the number 9 and has always been the main go-to guy for Fulham, especially this season so far. So I do anticipate as soon as Raul is back, he'll be back in the starting 11, which is unfortunate for Muniz, but it's one of those ones. That's a risk that you take with a 4.5 million striker. You may get away with it this week, but again, that's a minute's risk there where you probably shouldn't be taking a minute's risk for a team in Game Week 29 where so many players aren't playing.
Yeah, 100%. And then moving on into the Brentford attack, obviously we mentioned Tony already. He'll be quite highly owned this week, given the fact of his just proven record, penalty taker, set piece taker, the lot for Brentford against the Burnley defence that is pretty terrible. But why not get his partner as well, Johan Visser? 3 returns in his last 3, goals against Chelsea and Arsenal as well. What's your thoughts on him, Ben? For me, he's probably my third favourite forward, I'd say. If I was free hitting this week, he'd definitely be on my draft. What about you?
Yeah, I think he's probably up there, probably maybe even ahead of Carlton Morris there as the third sort of best striker this week. He's in great form. I mean, you can't argue that against a terrible defence this week. So he's got both of those sort of key important factors on a single game week that you need to potentially get a attacking return. He's going to be low owned as well. He's a lot of people who aren't free hitting won't be able to get him in. So the fact he's going to be so low owned means this could be the key differential to potentially push you ahead of those that are choosing not to free hit this week.
Yeah, 100%. And then finally, our last pick of the video. It's going to be Fofana from Burnley. Obviously scored an absolute worldie at the weekend against West Ham. He did return a couple of weeks ago as well. Could be a nice differential if you wanted to go really left field and sort of back against that Brentford clean sheet this week. What's your thoughts on him, Ben? He's got a lot of potential, this player, in a team that's sort of struggling a little bit.
A lot of potential, and I think if you see the sort of goal last week, it looked fantastic, and I mean,
Can he do
I'd be
it every
tempted.
week?
Can he do it every week? That's the real question. I think possibly not, but that Brentford defence isn't that good as well. So it's basically the risk you want to take. Do you want to sort of double up potentially on the Brentford attack, or do you want to spread that little risk and hope that both Burnley and Brentford score? I think it's all dependent really on whether you're going for a Brentford defender or not. If you're not going for a Brentford defender, you could double down on that, and it might end up being sort of really good for you from both perspectives of a Brentford clean sheet wipeout from Fofana. That would be the dream for those that do go for him. But again, it's a little bit more of a risk. He's so low owned as well that any points he does get, he will fire you up the ranks. But it is the risk of going without some fairly highly template players as a result.
Yeah, 100%. If you're gonna go with someone like Fafana, especially on a free hit draft, you need to just totally ignore the Brentford defence. You need to sort of double down on those assets. There's no point going for like half and half, and if I get one right, then great. It needs to be just double down. It just sort of almost predict the results that you're going into the game week for, because otherwise you're just going to come out with probably a similar score to someone who's going to be not free hitting that week, and that's just totally sort of a misuse of the chip. So definitely, if you're thinking sort of a Fafana or something similar route, don't go and back the defence that they'll be playing against. Okay, so that wraps up our Game Week 29 transfer targets video. Let us know who you're going to be bringing in, whether you're free hitting, whether you're not. Let us know your sort of strategy for this tough blank game week in the comments.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough one, as Josh said. And as always, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. I've been Ben,
I've been Josh.
and we'll see you guys
Later. Have a good game week, everyone.